In this video, we will wrap up our light mapping discussion by taking a look at the final panel of our light mapping window, which is, Lee?
It is the Maps panel. So I just went in, opened up Windows, Light Mapping, and our third panel is Maps. This one is fairly straightforward. It is an array size, so we can specify how many different light maps we're going to use.
Okay.
With our far map on the left, our near map on the right, and we can select and manually adjust these if we want to.
Now, is that array size only manual, or will Unity automatically increase that if you need more maps?
This is dynamic as long as you're not having your atlas locked.
Okay.
If you lock your atlas, then this will not expand when you bake.
Okay, good to know.
Other than that, if this is not selected and we bake, it's going to look at all the geometry that you're in your scene that's marked as static. It's going to try to lay that out the best it can in the minimum number of maps that it can squeeze it all into. And if it needs to, it will create additional maps all the way up to 254 pairs of maps.
Wow.
So, well, it's actually 255. It goes from 0 to 254, 0 based.
Okay.
So it will create up to 512 maps, I believe it is. So a lot of maps.
Yes.
Now, compressed just determines whether or not it's going to compress these maps into your build, or if it's going to leave it uncompressed.
Okay.
So by default, I just usually leave it as compressed. Now, these little swatches are just basically what file you're using for your map. Now, all of this, like I said, is fairly straightforward, but it relies on a couple of other things. Right here, this is your map index. This is this value right here.
Okay.
The light map index. So what this is doing is, if I select any one of my objects that are marked as static, because we only have one set of light maps, they're all using light map index 0.
Right, but if you set
right
that,
here.
if you set that to 1, you'd be listening to that next row of maps if you had anything in there.
Right. So if I really wanted to, just for sake of argument, I could take these maps and duplicate them in my second index, and then go to this ball and go to object, and I can tell this to use light map index 1. Notice nothing's changed.
Right, because it's the exact same map.
It's the same map, but even more than that is I'm using these tiling and offset settings, which specify where in this map the information for this ball exists. It's basically the UV coordinates followed by how much of that tile it's
Now, you might be thinking, well, why would that ever be handy? Why would you want to duplicate the same map over and over again? Well, what if you had a single object whose light map you wanted to edit a little bit, but you didn't want to affect anybody else's, and you were worried about making any tweaks to the actual maps themselves? You could make duplicates of your existing light maps, bring those in, and carry those into Photoshop, make any changes you like, and then designate those with just a single object. Like, I could grab the section of the light map that's just applied to my ball, and I could paint that, make it darker if I felt like it, and then just tell the ball to listen to that light map only.
Right. Now, this is really handy for doing exactly what Zach is talking about. Or if for some reason you have baked out a whole bunch of maps for your entire level, and then you have to bake out some more. The problem with this system is, if we bake out any new maps, whether we use bake or bake selected, everything in here gets wiped out. If these maps are located in the default location, which is in the same place that your scene is saved, it creates a folder with that same name, and it stores all of these light maps in that location. That's the default location.
Sure.
Anytime you hit bake selected or bake, it wipes all of these out and recreates them. Now, where this becomes problematic is if for some reason I add a new ball into a room, and that room is the only thing that I'm worried about affecting that lighting on it. I select all the things that make up that room, but outside of that room I have an entire game level. But I don't care about those. I just want to bake this one room with its new object in it. I would like to bake just those. Unfortunately, this system will wipe out every single map that you've baked out that's in this default location. Where this can be handy but very time-consuming, problematic, is being able to lock your atlas so the positional information does not change, the atlas index doesn't change. You can bake out your selected objects into this new map, hand position it into a new index, and then do everything by hand from that point forward.
Very cool.
very rough to do, but it
Yeah,
is possible.
yeah, I mean, it does offer a lot of power, though. It's not something I necessarily want to, take up over a weekend if I didn't have to. But
what I want to point out is mostly the fact that if I don't lock the atlas, and I'm going to leave this screen up, I can still bake from here. Let's say I do a bake selected. So I hit bake selected. I lost all the information that I had. Now my new light maps are calculated, and it's only calculating for this. I've lost all the map information from everything else. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come back here. I'm going to do a bake of everything again, just so I can get all that information. So now everything is back. Now I'm going to lock the atlas, come back here to the map, select again just this object, and bake selected. Now if you look, we still have the same resolution, but our UV coordinates are in the same spot. So it's maintaining that information, but it's still throwing away the map. So if I bake all again, I want to demonstrate one other thing that happens here. So now I have all my lighting information. I'm going to hand tweak out my atlas. And I'm going to, well, let's see, how do I want to do this? Let's do it this way. It'll be faster. So I'm going to throw our lighting map into a second array again. I'm also going to make sure lock atlas is still locked. Come over here, select the ball, and I'm going to bake again. We expect with bake selected to happen to keep these maps in this positional stuff. And we know it's going to throw the rest of the information away, but I've already added this other information here.
Well, but it's referencing the exact same file. Are you sure you don't want to move the file to a new location?
Well, we can.
Like, I'm just wondering if you wanted a second copy of those light maps from a second location to be put in there.
Right, and I can take these maps and I can move them someplace safe, like the demo. Let's put them in the root of the scene folder here.
Okay.
So now I've got these maps here, and I'm going to make sure that these associations are there. So technically, these are something completely
different.
different.
You got the same map in both slots. You had them both selected, so you have the same map in both slots.
Okay. Let's see.
Underneath the scene folder?
Yep. I've got to expand it out. I want to close out my demo. That's light maps from a different one. So these are the built-in ones. And let's minimize this. These are the ones that I just created, so this is the near. Okay.
There we go.
So the bottom two are pointing to the ones that are in my root of my scenes folder, while these top two are the defaults that are in here. So now I expect with Lock Atlas, I would normally expect these ones to get wiped out. These are ones that I've moved to a different location. I'm hand creating. So I'm going to select my ball. I'm going to hit Bake Selected. It did exactly what I expected here. It did not do what I expected to here. It threw them away.
Okay.
Now, it didn't throw the files away.
It didn't destroy them. It just disassociated them.
It disassociated them. Now, because we moved them to another location, we still have them. We can put them back. So now we can put them back here. So that's not a problem. We didn't lose that information. So that's still there, luckily.
Right.
So, but the problem is we have to hand build this index all over again.
Right. We'd have to go object by object and tell it to listen to index 1 as opposed to index 0.
Right. And with something like this where there's only one or two different indexes, not a big deal. If you have all 255 indexes filled, 0 to 254, times 2, so 512 maps that you have to hand drag back into this thing to place them where they need to be, then go make sure all the objects are pointed to the right index number. This becomes very problematic.
It'd obviously be a lot more work.
So you have to be aware of this. Whenever you hit Bake Selected, if these files are in their default location, they will be deleted.
Okay.
If you've moved them to another location for safekeeping, they still will be disassociated, and you'll have to put them back by hand.
Now, do you think, just for the sake of example, you could grab, like, say, the 3 walls on the floor and tell them to listen to index 1 just so we can see the change?
Yep. So I can... Well, I'm going to have to do this one at a time because there's not multiples.
Yeah, I understand.
But, hey,
actually, it did work multiples.
Nice.
Nice.
Some things work, some things don't. So now I can tell them to look at one. Matter of fact, I can, if that's the case,
everybody.
I can take all these guys and go to 1. So now everybody but the red ball is listening to index 1, which is here, and the ball is only listening to this one.
Gotcha.
So that will do it. And with a small scene like this, with only 2 different maps, not a problem. Large scenes can be a organizational nightmare.
Right, large scenes, a lot of objects, a lot of maps. It could be a lot more work.
Right. Just be aware of it. It's once you understand what's going on and you know the precautions, you don't really have to worry about it. The one thing that I do recommend that is after you've done a bake, move them out of this default folder. Put them in a different folder. If you drag and drop them, they'll still keep their associations, so you don't have to worry about that as long as you move them from inside the project view. If you move them inside of Windows Explorer, you will disassociate them because the database won't update. But move them out of the default location. That way you don't have to worry about accidentally deleting them.
Okay.
So,
now, is there anything else here inside of the Maps panel that you'd like to discuss?
inside of here, other than that, the fact that we have the same abilities we have from the other ones,
right.
We can clear, we can bake selected, and bake. These are the same options that are down here at the bottom here, and the same with inside of the
Gotcha.
object. So these are all still the same settings. That is everything that I wanted to cover for the maps, and everything that I want to cover for the light mapping setting.
All right.
Section.
So that will wrap up this section over light mapping. Now, I do want to throw out there that really this is going to take some practice on your part. You're going to need to play with these settings. They will change wildly from one scene to the next, depending on what you've got, with the quality that you're looking for, the particular lighting setup that you have in any given level. It will take some time to get the hang of this. Even knowing what everything is, it still takes some practice and experience to really become one with light mapping and to get really good at it. But that will wrap things up for this video. Thank you very much for watching.